Big Mac coding. If you're an absolute beginner who is looking to learn Swift coding for iOS development, this is a very good place to start. Today we'll be looking at variables and constant. Let's get into it. Every useful program needs to store data at some point. And in Swift, there are two ways to do it. There's variables and there are constants. A variable is a data store that can have its value change whenever you want, while a constant is a data store that you set once and can never change. So variables have values that can vary, and constant have values that are constant. Easy, right? Having both these options might seem pointless. After all, you could just create a variable, then never change it. Why does it need to be constant, you may ask? Well, it turns out that many programmers are less than perfect, and we make mistakes. One of the advantages of separating constant and variables is that Xcode will tell us if we've made a mistake. So if we say, make this date a constant because I know it will never change, then 10th line later, if you try to change it, Xcode will refuse. It will refuse, and it will give you an alert saying, hey, you're trying to change a constant value. It will suggest that you change that assignment to a variable instead. Constant are also important because they let Xcode make decisions about the way it builds your app. If it knows the value will never change, it is able to apply optimizations to make your code run faster. So in Swift, you make a variable using the var keyword. For example, let's set a variable name, and let's make that name John Doe. Also, we're using Xcode Playground to do coding at the moment. When we go deep into app development, then we'll go into Xcode itself and start playing around with the different features in Xcode itself. But for now, we're using Playground. So if we run this variable prints John Doe, like so. So because this is a variable, you can change it whenever you want. But the key here is you don't have to use this var keyword whenever you're trying to make a change. So let's change this name now to John Doe. So to do this, we will just use the variable name and we'll set that to whatever we want. So we want to change it to Jane Queen. So now if we run this, instead of printing John Doe, it will now print Jane Doe. So let's go ahead and see that in action. Jane Queen, I'm sorry. Let's change this to Jane Doe. And when it's run, when it's fully compiled and running, instead of John Doe, as it was assigned when we just started, it now prints Jane Doe. Now, what if we had made this variable name a constant instead of a variable? So to set a assignment as a constant instead of a variable, we use the keyword let. We use the keyword let. So if we go and we run our bit of code, it will still print or John Doe. However, now if we try to make an update, to that. So name, and we try to set that to Jane Doe. What you will see is Xcode would give us an error saying it cannot assign to value because the assignment is a constant and constant cannot be changed. So this is Xcode speaking to you, telling you that you're trying to change a constant and you're not able to do that. So constants are a great way to make a promise to Swift and to yourself that the value won't change. If you want a value that is changeable, we use the var. Swift developers have a strong preference to use constants whenever possible because it makes your code easier to understand. In fact, in the very latest versions of Swift, Xcode will actually tell you if you make something a variable, then never change it. An important thing to note, variable and constant names must be unique in your code. You'll get an error if you try to use the same variable name twice, like this. So for example, we have a variable name. The first variable name is assigned to John Doe. If we try to do the same thing to Jane Doe, like this, then it will give us an error because we're trying to reuse the name variable. So it gives us invalid redeclaration of name. So it have to be unique. So if we just add something else to the variable name, then it will go right through and run our code. So if the playground finds an error in your code, it will either flag up a warning in a red box or will just refuse to run. You'll know if the latter has happened because the text in the results pane has gone gray rather than its usual black. So this concludes our basic introduction of using variables and constants. In our next video, we will take a look at type annotations. See you then.